Okay. People will start to stream in here. I see participants coming in. We're just giving everyone a few more minutes as participants begin to stream into this webinar. Okay, I think we're going to get going. Welcome everyone for attending an Architosh and RICOH THETA webinar. All right, hold on a second. AEC professionals have long used photography on the job site. With today's digital cameras, site photography has grown more complex and more capable. Yes, there are good questions in this space. How do photos serve construction progress reports? How do photos serve collaboration in AEC? And how do photos serve specific processes like punch lists and schedule updates? These and more are some of the challenges we will discuss today in our webinar. Digitizing the job site using 360-degree images. My name's Anthony Froster-Robledo. I am the editor of Architosh.com and a practicing architect. And I'm here with 5 AEC companies who are on our panelist. Let's meet them. Bobby Main is architect with Silverman Trakowski Associates out of Boston. Kevin Cahill is principal with Luminetic from Santa Monica. Kevin Latati is with Latati Design. He is principal, Amesbury, Mass. Rick Butler, Casey Phillips, and Christopher Parody are with Wilhelm Commercial Builders, Annapolis. And Scott Moore, AIA CDT, is an associate architect with GWWO Architects in Baltimore. Again, my name is Anthony Froster-Robledo. I'm the editor-in-chief of Architosh and the host and moderator for this webinar. Okay, today's webinar is divided into 3 parts. Part 1, introduce THETA X and the THETA product line. Part 2, introduce RICOH 360 projects and RICOH 360 tours. Those are cloud-based applications. They are separate applications. Part 3, Q&A with the AEC panelists on THETA X. Okay, part 1, the THETA cameras. We have the THETA SC2 and SC2 Business Edition. We have the THETA X in the middle here, which is the star of the show. And we have the THETA Z1. Let's take a look at them. So in detail, I have singled out a couple of the parameters that break out the differences between these items. In general, this product line has been around since about 2013, 2014. It started with the SE model, now in its 2nd edition. That's a consumer-oriented device. It's priced about $300 US. It has image resolution capabilities of 5K, which is excellent, video resolution 2K and 4K options, and it comes with 14 gigabytes of internal memory. Well, its special features seem to be its price and its color range, so that's a wonderful consumer device. The THETA X is the device that the panelists and I have been testing out. It is brand new in the market, it is the newest one in the product line. It's priced significantly higher at about $800. It has image resolutions of 5K and 11K, video resolutions of 2K, 4K, and 5.7K, and it comes with much more internal memory, 46 gigabytes. Its special feature, one of several, is its LCD screen, and that's unique to the product line. It features a touch-based interface. If you know how to work your iPhone or your Android phone, you will find this interface very easy to navigate. And from that interface, you can do everything you would need to do to take images and view what you've taken on the screen itself. The THETA Z1 is the tour de force in the product line. It's kind of oriented at professional photographers, it's $1,000 and then some. Image resolution 6.7K, video resolution 2K, 4K, and its memory comes in options to 51 gigabytes. Uniquely, it shoots in RAW shooting format, has aperture priority, and has a 1-inch sensor. Okay, so there are RICOH apps for THETA X. I spent most of my time with the RICOH THETA app on the left. This is the basic application that runs on both iOS and Google Android. And you could see some of my photos that I took in my kind of experimental testing. THETA Plus is a more consumer-oriented application. It does many of the things that RICOH THETA app does, but it is more for, I guess, having fun with the images. As you can see some of the images here, like something you would use when you're on vacation. And this would pair beautifully with the SE2 application. I'm sorry, the SE2 model. So let me go to the next slide. Now let's look at the THETA X in action. I'm going to try to run through these slides as quickly as possible so that we can jump into the conversation with our panelists. So here are some views of the THETA X on my tripod in my living room. I just took these views so that we can sort of see it sort of in action. The back of the camera here is shown on the left, and you can see there's a very bright, large screen. It's very easy to operate. And you will also see that there's a lens on both sides of the unit. The front of the camera is in the middle image. The little blue lights indicate that the unit's on. And then the touch user interface is kind of shown. This is one of the screens on the far right. One of the things you do initially, of course, when you get your THETA unit is you hook it up to one of those applications for your mobile device. So the units use both Bluetooth and wireless connections. This is what the screen looks like when you're setting that up. Another thing that you'll do right away, if you are like me, is you will look at the default image size and determine if you're going to shoot a 5K or 11K image for your panos. The default setting is 5.5K, and I shot everything in that with the exception of a couple other images. 5K seems very acceptable for AEC work in the construction context. For finished architecture, though, you might want to bump up the resolution. When you've taken pictures with the unit and they are being streamed from the camera back to your phone, this screen pops up and it shows you the progress. Some of the other panelists have mentioned that one of the reasons why they shot with 5K is because they wanted to keep the images a little lighter so they can work more quickly. So let's take a look at what a 5K image looks like in its approximate size. This is my living room. You saw the camera set up a second ago on the tripod. This is what it looks like if you've never seen a 5K image, period. This is what you would see if you opened one up in, say, Apple Photos or Photoshop. This is not what they look like when they are inside of RICOH's 360 applications, which we are going to get to in a moment. So 5K image, approximately 11 megabytes, maybe 12, somewhere between 10 and 12 will be the normal range. And if we want to see what happens when we bump up to 11K, we're going to see, a tripling and then some of the size. Roughly 37 megabytes was the size for this particular image of my hallway in my house. So, all right, so that is kind of a quick introduction to the cameras. The apps, we will get into more detail with this stuff in our panel discussions. So what I'd like to do now is get into part 2 and talk about RICOH 360 projects and RICOH 360 tours. So tours, I'm going to try to move through tours quickly because this is not a tool that I personally spend any time inside of, but I do have a link active in the web browser. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share a different part of my screen, and think I need to do that. Yes, okay. All right, so I probably shouldn't move that. So here we are inside of RICOH 360 Tours. This is an application that was built kind of specifically for the real estate market. It seems excellent for the real estate market, but I think a lot of people in experiencing this will find uses for it in AEC, whether you're on the construction side or the design side. I think what we want to do is actually explore this in some detail. So just to give you a sense of the quality of the application, and also the quality of the imagery that these THETA units can capture. I'm not sure what camera took these photos, but and if they're 5K or 11K, perhaps one of RICOH's people that's on the call can answer that question at the end in the Q&A session. But what happens is you basically set up an account at ricotours.com, and you can set up a trial, and you are able to upload plans of your property, your house, your project, your building site, and you are then able to position with little markers on the plans and coordinate to the panels that you've shot. What's nice about this is it moves very smoothly between rooms, and we have the option to move via these little markers that will show up in various, your panos. If there's another one that's linked to it, you can click on it and you can just keep moving up through a space like I'm doing here. And this is a really nice way to experience a project and environment. You can also zoom in, and as I'm zooming in here, you can see the image is still very, very sharp. And I'm certain that during the pandemic, when we all needed to be remote, especially in the real estate market or the commercial sector where architects are involved in designing projects for speculative use, having the ability to kind of use a tool like this would be highly advantageous. You also have a way to navigate the images directly, and they have names. So I can go to the mudroom, for example, and it will take me to the mudroom. I don't have to use the plan. If you have more than one level, you can click between the different levels this way. And I'm just going to go to the living room real quick before we exit this, just to spin around this really nice house. And we'll go right up to the corner here. I think I went outside. We'll go right here and get right here in this wonderful 6-sided corner of the house. It's beautiful windows. So this is 360 Tours, and you can find that at ricotours.com. And what I want to do now is I want to quickly show you what I did in terms of testing out RICOH 360 projects. So I will click over to projects, and I've already logged in, and I will just give you a quick rundown of what this interface looks like. So when you log in, you will have to add a project. That would be the first thing you will do. The interface is fairly straightforward. There's a home button. There's a button with little figures on it, which is for your team, for building it your team, who you invite into this application. And there is both a full member and a light member. And a light member does not increment against the cost structure for the plan. There's a settings button, an upgrade button. You can upgrade to more photo capacity, for example, or upgrade to more members. And of course, your account button and help. I'll click on help real quick, and you can see just a little bit what the interface looks like. This is a quick start with iPad, team feature overview. We've all probably been, at least us people in the AEC market, have been on job sites where professional photographers are shooting, and they use iPads or laptops now. as an excellent way to not have to look at the camera and to set up shots. And so there is an app for the iPad.
That's what we used to use Polaroids for.
That's right. That's right. So let's go into a project because I already have some added. First thing you do when you're in a project, you will click on the Add Drawing button. These buttons are very logically oriented, so as soon as you get in, you're kind of drawn to the biggest thing you see in the interface, and that's the first thing you need to do. So I've already added a floor plan for this project. Once you've added a floor plan, what you want to do then is add a position. This is the position from where you took your pano. We will take a look at some of these in a moment. If you mess up with your positions, you can edit them and reposition them, and you can delete them. From the menu here, you can edit the drawing name, open an annotation list, copy drawing link, and delete the drawing entirely. So what I'll do is I'll click over here in position 3. And this is a big country house. It's actually a historic property in Wayland, Massachusetts. And we are doing a small renovation to this project. These little icons indicate positions that you can jump around to. And so you have this kind of virtual walkthrough experience. The interface down here, that top button means you can turn them off. And this button at the very bottom means you can annotate. And this button, if I remember correctly, is the pop-up for the plan. So this shows me where I am and where I'm looking. If I keep that open, I begin to navigate by just pulling the mouse to one side or the other. You can see the cone of vision begins to change. So that's a very nice feature for someone who may be a client who has come into the system and is a light member or a full member, but maybe a client would be a light member. And they could use that to navigate around. Now, I said earlier that I use the apps to actually control the shutter of the device to get out of the way of the camera. The Theta cameras are wonderful at making themselves disappear, but they can't make you disappear. So using the app is great. You can stand off to somewhere where it's not that critical and basically shoot away. So one thing that I want to point out about projects and why it's structured more for the AEC industry than say tours, it's not just the markup tools. The compare feature, for example, is an excellent way of addressing some of those questions that I started with in the beginning of this webinar. For instance, contractors and architects and engineers alike, and interior designers need to be able to keep their clients abreast of the progress of projects under construction. It's one of the most common questions as an architect that I get from clients once their projects have begun is, are we on track or are we not on track? Site photography traditionally in the era of film, and Kevin mentioned Polaroids. I, a long time ago, when I first started in the late 80s, actually did have a Polaroid and did shoot Polaroids when I visited job sites. It was just a quick way of grabbing an image, and you didn't have to wait for developing. Now we have nifty electronic devices and we can instantly see things on our devices. Now, these little guys are kind of calling us out to take a look and explore them. But before I do that, I want to point out the compare feature. And we're doing it now, but what you have down at the bottom is you have photos taken from the same position, but at different times. And when you upload a photo to a position that's already been established, you simply go to that position and add photo. You basically add photo through this button here. So over time, whether you visit a job site daily, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, or the contractor is taking these pictures, you can have your spots, whether they're in the center of rooms, off of column line, grid line locations, or just any kind of marker you have, to roughly get in the same position and take a comparative photo, an update on where things are. I will zoom in here, and as you can see, as I'm zooming, both pictures zoom at the same time. As I move around, their orientation moves in sync. This is a great way to see things that may become invisible to you over time. You can go back to an older photo and put it side by side. And once something's been covered up, like this beam line here is now underneath this roof, you can't see it, but you can in this kind of comparative format. Some of our panelists took photos inside of commercial buildings where you have lots of ductwork and things like that. And once things get covered up with chipboard and things, that's a wonderful way to be able to look at older photos and to basically know what's behind a wall, what's behind an acoustic panel, for instance. So I'm going to go out of the compare feature for a second. And we're at 22 minutes. I want to wrap this up so we can get into our Q&A with our panelists. Let me jump into this view here so that I can show you some of the other features. So we have the draw function, we have annotation tools. If I click this button off, the annotations go away. I'll remove the markers for a second. So if you're in a space and there's some kind of issue, you could sketch that issue, whether you're a builder and you're on a Zoom call and you are sharing basically a view of this space through this application. You can click the draw tool and you can start to suggest some kind of change. And I think I'm in purple, that's not going to show up. Let's go to red. And I'm over the same line. What? Okay, I think I need to save it. I'm sorry, I need to make. All right, so let me go back to draw for a second. Maybe I don't try to draw anything, but just simply show my previous markups. So you can mark this panel, for example, and say, what are we going to do here? The drawings don't indicate what we're doing here. These were some quick sketches that I did just to show how things work. There's a large new fireplace that's going to be beautiful stone, gutsy masonry fireplace that's at the end of this room, anchoring the space. I was sketching this for the contractor one day just to quickly talk about some things that had to do with symmetry, for example. Sketching's fine, but sometimes notes is what we really need. And what you can do here is you can use the annotation tool to pick a point and just locate an area where you want to put an annotation. Now I already have one done, so I'll just click on it. And what happens is the title and the little brief content I wrote, I'm sorry, I didn't write that. That's not my content. Hold on. Let me make one from scratch for a second. So let me go back to that photo. And I'm going to annotate, click on a position where you want the annotation to appear. I'll click here. And I'll write a note. This will just be a note. And I could say connector is, I don't know, wrong. Okay, click the position where you want the annotation to appear. I'm having, there it is. Okay. Thought I was having a technical issue. And speaking of, I have not had any technical issues working this application when I've been exploring it. So there's my annotation there. And if I click on it, this is the content that I wrote. There's the title, note, connector is wrong, etc. So that's, you can populate all the images, all the panels you have in the system with these kinds of feedbacks. And importantly, you can copy the link and drop it into an email. You can copy the link and drop it into a CDE system like Procore, for example. Those kinds of abilities are right there in the system. So I will go back now and leave this space. I'll just click here one time just so you can see the view of, oh, didn't want to do that. Hold on a second. Let's go here. So you did see earlier my camera set up in my living room, and I just wanted to just give you a sense of the quality of the THETA X unit. This was shot with 5K. And if I go here and click there, and never mind that those images have nothing to do with that Wayland project. Here's an 11K image. And if I zoom in, like into the clock, for example, the artwork, and I think I just did a mouse mistake there and went backwards, but you got a sense of the quality of the 11K and the 5K seem very similar in quality to me, but perhaps spending more time, I would recognize the benefit more of the 11K. So what I want to do now is I want to go back to my PowerPoint and pick that portion of the screen again. I think that's there. Okay, back to the presentation. So let's start part 3, and let's, having just briefly gone through RICOH 360 projects and RICOH 360 tours, let's bring up some of our panelists and hear from them about their experience with the THETA X camera and the SE2 camera, if they also explore that, and their experience using these applications, projects and tours. So Scott Moore, can we start with you?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
No problem.
So I have some of your panos here just in the PowerPoint. We can pop on over into projects to look at them if we need to. But can you tell me a little bit about why you were interested in testing the THETA X camera and the apps, and what you were sort of hoping sort of to learn and get out of it?
Well, I mean, it's kind of maybe kind of the self-explanatory that, you know, these 360-degree cameras can really put you in a space, right? And when we're showing this to clients or we can talk about buildings that we've been in, or if it's a renovation addition or a renovation project, we can put them in their space when we're not in their space. We find that a lot of our clients, they don't necessarily understand buildings or space. So it was kind of, having that opportunity, or to put them inside of a space that we would want to use as a precedent study, whether it's our own project or another's, and put them in there because it might not be possible to go visit. So that's kind of one of those things. Another being just as a way to track construction progress. Contractors take pictures, we take pictures all the time, but having a way to, those 2D pictures where you can't really get a sense of the space become really important, especially when we're mentoring younger staff, when showing how a building comes together. They go through all the schooling, have a really good idea of how to, think about things conceptually, but there is the reality of the situation that is often missing. And it gives us a way to do this without always being in the field. And then lastly, so there's that, tracking progress during construction visits, whether we're out, documenting existing conditions for a renovation project or a feasibility study, like we're going to start here in a few weeks, or hoping to start in a few weeks, where we'll go and we'll sit and we'll place this camera in every room, and then we can really have that to work back with if it's not something close by.
Right. You mentioned a really interesting thing that had to do with mentoring younger staff. Younger staff tend to not get as many chances to get out in the field like they probably would like. Senior staff go out in the field because they know how buildings really work, and they're in those positions. But in thinking about 360 projects and its compare feature, and being able to have a timeline of images and just being able to watch those images get built out over time, and seeing the layers accrue onto the beginnings of, a foundation, a frame, and then your finishes, I realize now that that's kind of an educational opportunity within the architectural office, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely, absolutely. And, you know, mentoring, something we take very seriously here. We try to get team members out to their projects, especially the younger staff when during construction. They've moved on to other projects, but, you know, it's good, excuse me, to see the project that you've worked on come together. But there's other people in the office that don't necessarily have that opportunity. When we can do group trips, you know, field trips out to site for site visits, we do that. But, you know, we have a lot of projects and there's only so much time. And this is a good way to present, especially that side by side of things coming together, and what it looked like a month ago and what it looks like now, what it started with, you know, 6 months ago. So I think the projects, I think that's a great feature of this.
What kinds of cameras does your practice tend to rely on now?
I mean, they're, you know, well, we have plenty of, you know, point and click or point and shoot. Obviously, I tend to use my cell phone when I'm on site, and then because it's the easy way for me to download it, get it back, get it up onto the network really quickly, because I do it all, you know, through the cloud rather than have to connect back to it. You know, it gets a little cumbersome, which is a nice thing, you know, with having these cameras that link to an app, that then you can, you know, move things around that way, as big as they are. So, it's a nice feature of this.
Right. One of the things that I was impressed with is when the camera, the THETA unit, pushed the image to my iPhone. It didn't take much longer for that to end up on all my computers because of, you know, whether you're on Apple or on Google, you know, these photo solutions push your photos to all your devices sort of over the cloud. And one can think of how prolific you could get with these devices and document the project to larger numbers of people very quickly. In the old days, you had to drive back to the office before and get your film developed or whatever.
Right, right. Or even go back and plug your camera in,
right,
download it, and then reduce the file size, or, you know, patch, you know, or if it's a panorama, paste a bunch of individual shots together to give you that panorama. So
right.
I'm glad we've passed that.
Yeah, definitely. And do you do much video taking with your smartphone, for example, on site?
Actually, I don't. But I mean, I have if the situation has warranted it.
Right.
But often, no, not generally.
Yes. So for construction administration purposes, you're working on a lot of big projects. You must be using a common data environment management tools like maybe BIM 360 or Procore, along with the contractors and so forth. And a lot of those tools, of course, encourage and have locations for photography. How do you see the integration potentially with this kind of photography in those solutions?
I mean, I think, you know, you had up earlier, you know, a plan, you click and brings you to there. I mean, I think it's that even as simple as that is wildly successful and beneficial. You know, and being able to, and there are so many platforms for, say, doing a punch list. You know, there's different ways that people do it, or different firms do it, and I think having the opportunity to kind of pair with this program or the software and this camera, I think is there's some good opportunities there for sure.
Right. Excellent. Excellent. So did you get a chance to play with any of the mobile apps in much detail?
Not in a lot of detail. Did use it a little bit. Well, so one of my teammates played with it in more detail. He wasn't available to sit in today, or he would have.
Right.
But you know, one of the things he found was that it did wear down because it brings in so much information and it processes it all. It was wearing down on the battery pretty significantly, more than you might expect. But at the end of the day, the quality that was produced out of it kind of offset that.
Right.
And it took me, I played more with the SE2 or SE1 software, and it took me a little bit of time to figure out exactly what I was doing. but
Right.
but I got it. So
Excellent. Well, thanks for exploring the
absolutely.
THETA X with on some of your work.
Yeah, we had hoped to get it out onto some others, and we just, schedules didn't allow to get out into a couple other projects, and site conditions too, to do that. But while I
Right.
have it, I'm going to try to get it out until I have to give it back, do a few more.
Sure. Excellent. Good to hear. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next panelist. I have Rick and Casey and Chris from Wilhelm Commercial Builders. I'm not sure who I should address. Rick, maybe you, maybe Chris.
Yeah.
So one of the things, you guys do a lot of commercial work now, similar. So this looks like it came from the last project from Scott, but this is you're a construction company, and one of the things that you showed me early on or spoke about early on was that you as a builder already use a webcam, and you set it up early, I'm sure, to monitor the progress of the project from out of the ground. But you mentioned that once the building's built, the camera is on the outside, you can't get into the inside, and so you were excited about the THETA X cameras from that perspective. Can you share a little bit about your perspective in terms of using this, just general approach to 360 panos from the contractor side?
Rick, I'm happy to address that. This is Chris with Wilhelm Commercial Builders. Thanks. A lot of our clients are not locally based and do not have the ability to have regularly toured our projects, and therefore they can't always see the progress as it goes on more regularly, other than maybe a monthly visit or a bi-monthly visit. We use OxBlue for site photography that monitors the time lapse from start to finish on the exterior of the project. But as I mentioned, on the interiors, it's a lot of still photos that we implement through Procore. This would be fantastic when we are helping to explain a dynamic of the project that has multiple disciplines such as sprinkler, electrical, mechanical, whatever, interfacing and integrating together so that the positions of the camera and the zoom and 360 view would allow them to really see and understand what the issue is. So I was actually quite excited about being able to be a part of this trial so that we could really get to see the cameras in action. And Rick and Casey are certainly much better on the implementing that portion of it than I am. But this is a very valuable tool that I see for our clients in integrating with Procore and with them out of state.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of the out of state factor with your clients, do you think that the 360 projects interface, being as simplified as it is, would be an easy on-ramp for them to engage in this panoramic photography?
Once it was set up by Rick, I was able to easily navigate through the plan to see different parts of the project. I was able to look at the plan and know what areas I wanted to look at. Mm-hmm. And I was able to identify that area and be able to zoom right in on exactly what I wanted to see. And quite honestly, I could see much clearer images than I expected to be able to see. So it was very useful. And I believe that they, with the help of the 360 project, would be able to benefit as well, because they'll know exact part of the building that we're talking about, the exact area. They can see what the impacts are. And, you know, I think that that would be a very valuable tool for them in that format. Not so much the tour.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense. And how do you see the maybe the camera's photography being of use for collaboration with maybe your subs or even just, you know, the architects, engineers? And what is your your general contractor perspective on collaborative capability?
From a construction standpoint, the biggest thing that we see is a lot of time the collaborative group effort on coordinating drawings between multiple disciplines, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, etc. It becomes a little bit more difficult in tight spaces. And I believe that this could be a valuable tool, not just with our client, but as I was mentioning before, when you have a specific scenario that you are trying to address. And, it can not only create the images necessary to view that scenario, but it can also help give a better understanding to the design team on how to address that on other projects.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. Well, thank you for participating in trying the trial of the THETA X.
Well, thank you. And Rick can speak to all of the technical stuff.
Okay. So, Rick, what is your perspective on the ease of use of the unit? I know that I think in talking to all the panelists, people had slightly different experiences as they approached the tool on different platforms to Android versus iOS. How easy or not easy was it for you to set this up?
Yeah, I think it was really easy to set up. I've used it on an iPhone and an iPad, the THETA X, that is. And, once you figure out how to connect it, each device through the Wi-Fi, the local Wi-Fi network, it always, connects right away, whether it's a new device or something you've used before. And then I love being able to, in the job that you're looking at here of the pictures, being able to set up our tripod, and then I can actually go and take my phone, I walk around with my phone and I use my phone to take the actual picture. So I don't have to press the button on the camera, which is great because it's going to capture me in the picture. So what I can do is actually walk around the corner and then use my phone to then capture the picture. And it fires off right away. And then, this is about a 20,000 square foot, office fit out. And it might take me all of, 5 minutes to walk around to all these different points on the project and, take these pictures. And, as Chris was saying, it's great for, relaying to owners that are out of state or just too busy to come by or have questions about things, always keeping them up to speed with things. And also I found it useful internally and kind of dealing with certain RFIs and things like that, being able to go back and reference old photos in our project. Actually, something that, if you're taking regular photos, some things you might not capture. Like we actually had an issue with, or a question with a cable in the ceiling, a really small cable. And I was able to go back because the camera captures the whole project or the whole site. And I was able to go back and actually zoom in on that cable and find it, with the camera, which was a big help for us because, otherwise we would have never been able to have that as a reference for this question that we needed to figure out. So all of those things are very useful, and we're really looking forward to the potential as a marketing tool as well, for on our website, which we spoke about, when we talked on the phone, after this is going to be more of a higher end finish, office fit out, which is going to look really great at the end, and very architecturally and designing pleasing wise. in that way. And, you know, it's going to be a great tool to be able to use these types of photos to, you know, host them and be able to show as a marketing tool as well as far as the type of work that we do.
Right, right. You raised two interesting points. One was about points, and I wanted to ask you what your feeling is about. I mean, this is a big project at 20,000 square feet. You know, obviously you probably do even larger than this, but being able to remember all these points where you put the tripod, right? Did that come up as kind of a mental issue as you were working and thinking about like what kind of technology might be needed to sort of address that problem if it is? Because especially with the compare feature, you do want to be pretty close to the original point, so that you can have kind of almost a one-to-one accuracy as you look at pictures over time. I'm not sure what the solution is there, but I'm just wondering if that crossed your mind. And then the other point was about just you know, when like that wire being really small, when things get closed up, you have the ability to look back at the old photographs and be able to see what's behind surfaces that are now, you know, masking what's like that wire or a duct or whatever. What are your thoughts about both of those issues and where this kind of photography can maybe address those kinds of challenges?
Yeah, so that did cross my mind, and luckily I'm just super familiar with you know, the layout at this point, so it was very easy for me to plop these photos in. But I did think about, you know, yeah, when you do have something bigger or something that's brand new that you're starting on, and you can kind of get turned around when you're going to align the project or the photos in the projects tool. And I don't know if this is a feature already or not, but you know, something that just pops in my head, or that did at the time of you know, putting it in the projects application, is actually being able to open up the projects application when you're taking the photos, click a spot, and then use the projects, like how I was talking about walking around with my phone. Say I had the projects application open on my phone, I click the spot where I'm standing and then take the picture after I've already selected the position, rather than what I believe with this one I had to do the opposite, was take all the photos and then go back into the projects app and put where each photo was, rather than just stand in that spot, click the spot that I'm standing in, and it'll automatically link it up when you take the photos.
Right. I mean, there's GPS technology in the cameras, at least the THETA X. And I don't know enough about GPS to know what the opportunities might be there for maybe the GPS data in the unit being able to serve some role in this kind of positioning aspect. But maybe the RICOH folks at the end could maybe talk about that. But now that's all really excellent. Excellent. So I need to move on to the next panelist. But thanks, Rick, for that great feedback.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so the next panelist is Kevin Latati, and Kevin, we already heard from you earlier. And Kevin's background before he was an architect, it was a professional photographer, so it was very interesting to give a device like this to someone who has that kind of background. And I see you even used the, I think the tiny little tripod, which was an accessory that some of the panelists, I think, received, right? So that you can mount the device on the floor like you've done in a couple of these shots, or I think one's in the attic level. So Kevin, tell us a little bit about your experience using the THETA X, and some of the thoughts that you had while using it. One of them that you shared with me is about having it be not on battery power, but powered on all the time, so it can maybe somehow leave the camera in position to take photos over time. Maybe you can elaborate on what you were thinking about.
Well, I mean, it's back a long time ago, I used to do time delay photography during construction, sort of see the progress. So you'd set up a camera up in an area where you'd have a timer on it, so it would go off periodically over during the construction. So you sort of saw the progression. This camera is very interesting that it could do this as well, but the question is there a way to set it up remotely and trigger it remotely? I mean, of course, you could use a Google camera or something else and do that. So maybe there's other technology, but I did play around both with the still images, and I was also using it as a video to sort of, as workers were working, video the progression, and more from, I think someone earlier was saying it's good for folks in the office to see what's happening in construction to get a better sense of progression. So I was interested in what that would look like. These are images taken just after Blue Board went up. And I think, like everyone, everyone's so busy now trying to get back to the job sites and continue to photograph during the progress of the project is always a problem. There's one of the builders who's actually on the, I think he joined the webinar. We're doing a project in Natick, and I just texted him because he's very interested in the cameras. Like, wouldn't this be interesting for us both to be working with a device and sharing the information back and forth as a review tool as questions come up on the job site, et cetera? You have perhaps a more fluid global, in the sense that it's a 360 review of what's going on. As a photographer, of course, I heavily photograph our projects before they start, and during the projects I photograph them a lot, both with an iPhone, a small camera, Panasonic, with a Leica lens on it, and then I have a Canon 5D that I do most of the photography with. But the interest here, of course, is and I said this earlier to you, the idea that we don't see everything when we're photographing our still images, don't think about every little detail that we're recording. So to have a 360 image, you can go back and say, okay, what happened here? I forgot to take a picture of that, and zoom in and look at it. And, it's not as good as a detail with the 5D, but for most of the purposes of what we need, this does a really nice thing.
Right.
And the other aspect is it, from a marketing tool, it's fun to, I did play with the Theta Plus program and turn them into videos, and I think I sent you some of those, Anthony, just to do short clips, movie clips, video clips of a single image here. So, of course, we're looking at it as a flat image that you've taken 360, and it's like the old world maps that you flattened out,
Right.
cutting them in funny shapes. And for most people, this is a useless way to look at the image. So, playing with the projects, someone asked me, can you take rough measurements off the project's file? And I think you can. Kalen, can you comment on that? Is that something that tool allows you to do when you're taking these images and you import them into projects?
This is Dean Willett about RICOH, Kevin.
Okay.
It is not yet available, but similarly to CAD and BIM integration, they are part of our product roadmap. And
Okay.
we intend to introduce those features in the near future.
Yeah, I think when I did my demo on projects, that might have been one of the tools he pointed out that said, this isn't not ready for prime time, but this is one of the things that they're going to have, which was of interest to the builder that I'm working with, to be able to do that. But,
Yeah, so Kevin, I think raising the question about dimensions, and it's funny because it hasn't come up yet with the panelists. but I think we're all aware that that kind of technology is emergent in the market, and there's a lot of different technology out there for measuring, like 3D laser scans from Faro and so forth, and Leica, and I mean, those devices can cost thousands of dollars.
Yeah, wow.
So, and then there's a kind of middle ground position where a lot of people are doing things with Matterport, for example. And I do know that RICOH and the Theta group has set up some integrations with Matterport, and our next panelist did some. Bobby Main has done some of that investigative work because they use Matterport. You raise a lot of interesting point about the kind of being able to time lapse, and that goes back to the point about positions. Like if you're gonna have to bring the camera there all the time and position it. I mean, if a contractor has it, they might carry it in their bag or keep it in the job trailer or something like that. Maybe there's different ways to solve the positioning through some kind of other device that gets positioned stationary on the building and can do some kind of triangulation so then you know where you are exactly, and it can integrate with the app on some level as well, like Rick was saying. But I think these kinds of things will get resolved in the fullness of time. I do have people's images in the projects, and we could zoom over to look at them at the end. I think what I'd like to do first is just kind of keep moving through the panelist. Before we go, I want to mention one thing. You did ask about power. There is an adapter, an AC power adapter, that's an accessory that you can buy for these Theta cameras. So that at least solves the power part of the issue that you and I talked about. If you had the camera kind of positioned there kind of remotely, almost like a robot that's going to do its thing, and you can control it from over the internet. It seems all very doable. So the power part's there, but you still have to think about where the camera is going to be and how it's not going to get touched and moved and bumped into and all that kind of stuff, or in the way. So
you certainly can, on the Theta X, you can certainly get extra batteries for it. So if you're shooting, I mean, I did find the battery drain is quite quick. So I mean, that's the option. I mean, certainly on our digital cameras now, we all carry extra batteries. Nothing worse than being on a shoot and having no battery charge left. So that's an option. And then when you're really stuck, for your phones and iPads, you have your extra charge packs that you carry with you. So
yeah, that's true. Similarly, that's what happens, especially when people travel. Well, thanks, Kevin, for this interesting feedback.
You're welcome. Of course, I'd like to spend more. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, we just started this 1709 house today, and that's before I have to give this back, I'm going to spend some time out there and really use the Theta camera for that. And it'd be interesting to follow that project with the camera on both the initial reconnaissance work and then through into construction. It'd be very interesting to follow a project through.
Right. Excellent. Well, I hope you begin that. Okay, so Bobby Main is an architect with STA in Boston. Silverman, Trikowski and Associates is the firm's full name. Bobby, are you there?
Yes, I am. How are you doing today?
Good. I think you did some of the more interesting things because you were integrating this with Matterport, and I know you and I had some interesting conversations about Faro scanners and photography and Matterport and just the way these tools are being used on job sites. Can you tell me a little bit about your integration with Matterport and how that kind of went for you?
Absolutely. Just to give you a little bit of background, our office, we do a lot of small projects, existing conditions. We work a lot in the Back Bay. So we do have a Faro scanner in our office, but for anyone who has or has not used a Faro scanner, they're tens of thousands of dollars. They travel in a suitcase. Each scan takes about 10 minutes. We have an older one, and then you have to go back to your office and actually stitch them all together, which is a very labor intensive process. And of course, we know that newer scanners do this, but we have not upgraded yet. So when we were presented with this opportunity to test this camera, personally, I've also been looking for real estate, and actually, this is my condo that I'm in the process of purchasing. But so I'd been playing around with Matterport a lot because I kept seeing all these Matterport scans, and when I found out that the RICOH THETA camera has Matterport integrations, I started to think to myself, I'd be interested to know how close using the RICOH THETA could get us compared to a Faro scan. Now, obviously, I understand this does not have LiDAR. This does not have, it is a hundreds of dollar device as opposed to a tens of thousands of dollar device. So I wanted to set my expectations accordingly, but I wanted to at least test the waters and really put it to use and see how accurate it was. So again, so what I did here was, this is a place that I had access to, and I went and I measured every dimension of the place because I wanted to make sure I had an accurate dimension. And then I went back and did a Matterport scan with it. And I was actually very impressed on how easy the Theta worked with the Matterport, because basically you download the Matterport app and then you connect to it. Anyone else on the panel who's used the RICOH THETA app, it's a very similar integration. You just connect to it via Matterport's app instead of the Theta app, and then you can control it from your phone. And we put it on a tripod and you take a photo, move it a few feet, take another photo. And it takes about 5 seconds to take the photo, about another 5 or 10 seconds to actually upload it to the app. And then on your phone, you actually see the scans starting to position themselves in alignment with one another. Mm-hmm. So you can actually see, the image on the left, you can see all the scans I took. There were 29 total scans. And you can see that's the progression I took. I went to each room and I did that. And I measured the entire space in about a half hour, maybe 40 minutes. Mm-hmm. Even with a Faro, that would have taken me 3 hours easily. So that was great. And then, with the Matterport app, you basically push it up to Matterport's cloud. And then an hour or two later, you get an email saying your Matterport scan is ready. And you can go to your website and then you get a full 3D thing. And what I thought was really great about this is for Matterport, you can, on the image on the right, you can see in the bottom left corner, there's the plan view and there's also a dollhouse view. And the dollhouse view is where it's in right now. You can actually move it around. And then similar to RICOH projects, you have those stationary points. You can do the full 360, but you can also, I liked the fact that you can actually do a plan. It generates a plan view for you. You don't have to actually upload its own plan. And the dollhouse view is cool as well. And then also with the dollhouse view, it has the measurement tool. So you can actually pull a measurement anywhere in the space. So that's where it got interesting, because again, this is not a LiDAR device, but it was pretty close. Now, it is not 100% accurate. It is not 95% accurate. I'd say it's about 75% accurate. On a 10-foot or so dimension, it was off an inch or two. On a 30-foot dimension, it was off maybe 4 or 5 inches, maybe 6 inches. But compared to the time and expense of a Faro, it could definitely have its use. And, the joke that I always say is you can go to a space, take 30 photos of something, and sure enough, when you get back to the site, you'll need that one thing that was just out of one of those shots. Here, for a fact, you have captured every single part of the space. And to me, that is invaluable. Mm-hmm. So I really liked that because again, it's a web-based tool, so you can even send it to your client. You can say, here's the thing. So some of our clients actually, on their own have done their own Matterport scans, and they use it actually as 3D walkthroughs of their new facilities to show off to their boards, to their visitors, people who may not want to come in because of COVID. So it's become really useful, I think. And, I was really impressed on the ease of how it all went because it's very user intuitive.
Right. That's really interesting. So, the accuracy obviously is not going to be like a, $10,000 laser scanner with LiDAR, but
of course,
but so, and you mentioned that. And so, but those few inches, there's a lot of contexts in which those few inches off doesn't really matter, right?
Exactly. Yeah. There are certainly, times that, I would always go back and if it's a critical dimension, I'm going to get a hand dimension anyway. But, to start an overall space plan, if you're okay with it being a few inches off and you just want to get something quick to get something, you're out in the field, you want to get something back to the people in the office, they can start generating something right away. This process is an hour. That could, if I'm 3 hours away, by the time I get back to the office, it's already processed and sitting in my email box or someone else's email box.
Mhm.
So one other thing that Matterport does have that we did not unfortunately get to test out is that they actually do offer they will actually export it, something that you can import into Recap for Autodesk.
Mhm.
So we unfortunately have not gotten to that point yet. I'd be interested to see if the dimensions are any more or less accurate via that, because it's actually giving you a point cloud as opposed to,
Right.
trying to measure something off of a 3D tool. So I think that's something we want to try at some point in the future. The only problem with that is that Matterport's pricing scale is a little wonky, frankly. You can do one for $10 or, many more for $80 or $90 a month.
Right.
So, and you don't actually have the option to purchase them until you don't have to purchase the point scans unless you have one of the more expensive plans.
Mhm.
So, we weren't ready to push that button yet, but we may do it just to try one, just to see how accurate the point cloud actually is.
Mhm.
So, but, again, I certainly hope that, if RICOH is listening, and I know you are, that you guys look into adding things like, point cloud exporting or measuring tools within the Tours app, because that can make it really useful as well.
Do you see a connection between the dollhouses? You're right. The dollhouse view of what Matterport creates is quite interesting, and I have engaged with them. The contractors that I've worked with have generated. Interestingly, sometimes a dimensional issue is the key issue, and because you can't be certain of the accuracy, you end up having to go out to the job site. So it seems to me there's a kind of big gap between that dimensional comprehensive accuracy and something that's just not comprehensive. And there it seems a big technology and price gap between those two different worlds. And I'm not sure how that gap gets closed, but the Matterport and the dollhouse feature, do you see a possibility for this to be integrated with RICOH 360 Tours? Is that what you are sort of suggesting there?
Yeah, I would love if, I think, the things that I know Matterport's a few years ahead of, 360 Tours, but I think it'd be a really helpful thing for you guys to bring in-house if you have that opportunity.
Mm-hmm. How important is this kind of scanning work to your firm's workflow?
Critical. Very, very often, a lot of our projects, again, like I said, we do a lot of work in the back bay, some historic preservation. And of course, for something like that, we're going to use the Faro because that's very important. But if it's a smaller space or you don't have the time, because sometimes, these projects might be a very small project and you don't have 2 days to spend farrowing a project. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of weighing that, do I want to spend 2 hours doing it with the Matterport and the THETA, or do I want to spend 2 days with the Faro, understanding the trade-offs between the two? So, right. And I think, as this technology gets better and better, those trade-offs are going to become a lot less, which was going to be great to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you for sharing your work and for trying out the THETA device.
Thank you for having us. It's a really exciting tool.
Thank you. Okay, so our last panelist, Kevin Cahill from Luminetic. He is an architect and a well-regarded visualization professional. Kevin's background, I've known Kevin personally for 20 years, I think. Met him in New York City as part of the Macintosh 3D Users Group a long time ago. So one thing I haven't mentioned in the webinar yet is that these devices shoot HDR imagery, which in pano form, obviously is what you would put in the background of a rendering tool, like Twinmotion, for example, which is what Kevin has been doing a lot of work in lately. So Kevin, are you there, Kevin?
Yep, I'm here.
Yeah, okay, good. So can you tell me a little bit about the process and what's involved in using one of these cameras to go out to a site? And this is a fantastic location right here. I know this is maybe not a site for a real project, but the light in this image, I think, says it all about how you capture that kind of light quality in an image and then use that as your panoramic background for a high-end rendering.
Yeah, if this image this is my second try. The first time I did it on an actual site downtown in Little Tokyo. I did it by hand, and that was I didn't stitch it right, so I didn't bracket it right. So I wound up not using that then I went back out and bracketed this sequence, and there's about 7 images here from this is more like the golden hour, and then it will blow it out to a higher res or higher lighting version. And then you can take that into Twinmotion. It's still early, so you kind of have to force the JPEGs and convert them through a series of steps through Adobe Lightroom, and then you make it into Photoshop with an HDRI process. So it's not really, everybody's not going to be like jumping onto this, but it's doable. I had to kind of force it through. It's possible. And then I don't know if you got the other images where it actually shows the bench in there with that little cubes and things, but you could use it in Twinmotion. So like when in Twinmotion is the right image, so you're getting a really the highlighting setting in Twinmotion. So I wasn't able to get the better lighting in the background for the sky, which I also wanted to use as the background for the context, right? Because I have other projects like that where you just want to see the view, which would be cool. But for lighting itself, that bench there, you can see that it's taking the lighting from the photo and putting it under the shadows and lighting the edge of the bench, because like the one on the left, you just don't have any of the sky dome effect, and the one on the right matches exactly from what that photograph took, which is pretty cool. So it's definitely an easy way to get into making your own HDRs, and the next version should be even better, like a higher res version. So I would love to test that one out and see if that makes it easier as far as the process, but it's doable and it's down and dirty. You can get in there, take the pictures, you're done. It stitches them perfect. It's really, really nice. That process before was a lot of Photoshop and a lot of stitching and all, and layer them all in Photoshop. To be able to have multiple bracketed images and be able to place them all together, that's perfect. So,
Right.
Yeah,
so I mean, I'm so glad you looked at this, because this was one of the things that struck me with this camera initially, was that it spanned the gamut between two things that are super critical to architects right now, which is, the rendering space in the architecture industry is really important right now, and there's a whole slew of new rendering tools out there. And it's highly competitive, and it's advancing at a rapid rate. And that's because the technology, mainly the hardware side, has enabled people to do very high-end renders quite quickly now. So if you can do them fast, you're going to do them for clients, and you're going to do a lot of them. Those kinds of images tend to really move the needle, move projects down field, and get things through. And over hurdles and so forth. So I know this is a very basic fast test that you did here with the bench and the two objects, but I can see, just comparing the two, that you're getting much better shadow resolution underneath the bench, and even the sides of the cube are much more reflective of that kind of hazy LA sky that you have going on in that image. Do you think that, because you did go through a process and you had to get the image into a specific format, correct, before you could use it as a sky dome on a tool like Twinmotion? What is that format?
I actually had to convert it to 3 steps. I brought it into Adobe Lightroom and then took those like 5 or 6 bracketed images, condensed them into one, pushed that out to Photoshop, and there's an HDR plugin Pro for Photoshop. Since they're already stitched, you don't have to worry about the stitching part and the fall off of the camera, which is great. So that's great. But then that comes back out as a regular PNG file. And then there's another step where there's a plugin for Photoshop where you have to export it as an EXR, which Twinmotion can read.
Okay, right.
So it's getting it. Once all these pieces are more like, there's more formats. Like this sky function literally just came out like I think a week ago in Twinmotion. So it was there, but it wasn't there to be able to change your own images. You couldn't put your backgrounds in. So as this progresses, I think Twinmotion will definitely jump on. Or even if you went to Unreal, full Unreal, I'm sure you could do it better with get more of the metadata, because you can get the GPS data, you can get the actual coordinates and all that, and tied into like a virtual twin of someone on site versus in the computer. So it has a lot of metadata that's there. Getting all the things to talk to each other is the trick. How does what software talk to what? So it's there. Some of the pieces are getting dropped out right now, but it's going to get there. So yeah.
Yeah, excellent. I know, just myself as an architect, that when we have high-end renderings done by consultants, they will often ask for site photography. And so that's usually something I will do. I'll go out to the site and take a zillion photos on my iPhone, and then they'll use that literally to stitch the background for either a pano like this, but often just if it's just a still image, you know, on V-Ray or something like that, where it's just one, you can't turn around or anything. But this is kind of an interesting development, and I'm glad that you kind of got into this to show us sort of what was possible. It's nice to know that you can have a camera like this that at least gets you out of the whole stitching business, so that you can get these backgrounds that you can then insert into your projects.
Yeah, I mean, the V-Ray may be able to take more information, get a little better backgrounds than Twinmotion at the moment. So that's a whole other avenue to kind of explore. But
Right.
the stitching part and all the layers are there, so it's pretty simple.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Kevin.
No problem.
We are about an hour and 15 minutes now, and I know that there are some questions out there, but I just want to go, you know, before we get into the Q&A, and just kind of do a little bit of a wrap up here. So we've been talking today about the RICOH THETA X camera, which is RICOH's latest camera, a 360 spherical panoramic camera. They all take spherical 360s in the whole lineup. They just vary in terms of their memory, battery life, resolution, and other minor features. We looked at the product line earlier. The THETA X is one that RICOH feels is a very strong contender for the AEC industry, and they have their RICOH 360 projects that can go along with that. On the right here, a couple other things to make note of. The walkthrough feature, which I showed with the plan markup support, is, you know, a key aspect of what makes this useful for the AEC industry. The ability to organize projects by projects, to drop in your plans and put pins on them for the locations. We talked about the importance of that, and to be able to share with stakeholders at an individual granular level the specific photos, so you don't have to share the whole thing. You can just send them you know, a specific thing. Sometimes getting clients behind the curtain is not what you want to do on projects. You want to kind of control what people see for various reasons. Markup and annotation features are there. They are at this stage, I would say, more on the basic level, but those are things that tend to evolve. Light users, I mentioned this earlier, but that means that I believe there's a zero cost markup. You know, there's zero cost to add a light user as a user. I believe users basically, and you know, I think Dean could maybe jump into this at the end when I wrap up, but the number of users is going to determine the cost with the RICOH 360 projects. But I believe a light user does not increment that user count, if I have that correct. Timestamp pano compare feature is, I think, one of my favorite aspects of this. And of course, I mentioned you can send links to just about anyone. So a couple other things on the camera. There is a GPS and AGPS accurate position information that is in the camera and in the images from it. I don't fully understand that. I'm hoping that maybe Dean could chime in a little bit on that. One thing I do understand, however, and we just didn't have time to get into it with anybody, but these panos can go right into VR headsets, whether it's an Oculus Rift or HTC Vive or some other headset out there that's very popular. These are things that are also edge of market, becoming more mainstream in the AEC industry. Being able to get a headset on, and if you haven't been in one before, it's quite an experience, and turn around using your body is a completely different reality. So that's another benefit of the THETA cameras and what they can produce. Dean, do you want to chime in now about anything that has been mentioned and that maybe I have wrong, or something that you want to address that someone has said?
No, as I've mentioned before, we are looking at on our product roadmap the introduction of dimensional data capture. as well as the integration of RICOH 360 projects with CAD and BIM. And as was pointed out, you know, there are technologies out there with dimensional data capture. They are very expensive. And one of the challenges for our product development team is to try to present these features, these key features, at a price point that you know, the market will accept and will bear. But these features will indeed be forthcoming. And you are correct about the light users. Light users are in essence individuals, as you say, that do not count against the subscription costs of RICOH 360 projects, to whom you can share individual photos. So as you say, you don't want to share an entire project, nor do you want to provide, say, edit or administrative rights, say, to a contractor or to even a client. You can send them the imagery, including any drawings or annotations on the imagery, send them or assign those individuals as light users. So you can readily share the imagery that way.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for clarifying all that. We do have a couple of questions from attendees, and I'll see if I can answer them, but actually one of them is directed to Scott. So Scott, you mind taking this question? So the question, are you finding that downloadable exports like Cloud Point, 3D Mesh, et cetera, are mandatory in addition to capturing construction progress tracking? Not sure Scott is still with us. Actually, okay, so actually there's, let me just skip that question for now. And there's a question from Toby. So Toby asked the question to the panel, both architects and construction, thinking, is there a reasonable cost to charge to clients? I think he's asking about cost, and is this sort of a reasonable thing to add into your services for clients to pay? I think this will have a different kind of answer depending on whether it's an architect or a construction person. So Chris, maybe you want to answer that, or Rick from the construction side, and anyone else on the architect side can maybe go after.
Sure, I'm happy to comment. In the construction side, we find ourselves in a very competitive and almost sometimes volatile market, to where there's a lot of tools in which we use to try and set ourselves apart from our competition. And being that this would be more of a, I almost see this as a sort of a licensing type of thing, that as we allow access through the light features to different clients, it's not really a charge that we would carry or pass on to our client, but one that we would absorb to offer certain options to our clients that a lot of our competition wouldn't have.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Does anyone want to respond from the architect side in terms of how you tend to look at these charges or fees or expenses relative to how your fee structure might work for your architectural clients?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, I was actually talking with a builder friend of mine about this, and wondering if this is something that they would offer as an additional service from a point of view of monitoring. You know, if you want to monitor a project and have the 360-degree visualization and comparison. So he was, you know, talking out loud about that. From an architectural point of view, it's hard enough to get clients to understand that they need to pay more for more highly developed renderings, let alone try to get them to pay for more documentation. So I don't have an answer for it other than clients just think what we do is it's hard to get compensated for the additional technology that we tend to incorporate into our work that we do.
Mhm. No, I think that's a good point. It's always challenging to justify increased fees to clients, and I think a key thing that I tell to vendors, technology vendors, is to put effort into developing the arguments and the strategies for why it's justified. And a key one, of course, is just, as I said earlier, clients are always wondering if the project's on time. And most projects do not run on time. I can't even think of a project that I've done where it actually hit the deadline, except one. And it was a restaurant, just had to hit the time that they announced they were going to open. But generally projects run over their schedules. And what I see with this kind of technology is the use of, especially with the comparative feature in projects, the being able to monitor the construction schedule at some level. And this is where it gets into other kinds of emerging technologies that are out there, such as the ability of AI, for example, to recognize in the imagery certain components of the building, to know the difference between finished wood and like maybe wood framing, or to recognize ductwork and to have a sense of what that is, and so that it can compare it to other data that it has, whether it's a BIM model or drawings, and so that there can be some kind of rough assessment of how things are moving along in terms of schedule. And that Kevin, is where I see, you can offer, you can make the argument that these technologies help us accelerate delivery and hit schedules, which, when you don't hit schedules, that costs a lot, as Rick and Chris can tell us, so another aspect to this is what you touched on, had to do with monitoring and remote monitoring. And sometimes it depends on the type of work, but there are clients who are highly involved and are great at being team players in the process and don't tie down the process. And there are those kinds of clients who, when they get really involved, actually kind of slow the process down. So the remote monitoring is an interesting aspect to this technology, because it enables people to think about, from the perspective of, would it be good for our class of clients with this client to promote this as something that can help us move the project along faster. Bobby, did you have any comment about any of that, the fee side of things?
Yeah, we haven't really talked too much about that internally. But one thing that we thought was interesting, I touched on this when I was talking, was that, one of our clients on their own came out and, hired a company to do a Matterport scan of the final condition to show people. And we were just like, well, we're on site all the time. Why don't we offer that as a service? So we're looking into how to integrate that. I think the hard thing there is that, the way Matterport works is that you have to have you basically have to set up an account on behalf of the client, because if they want to share it publicly, they would have to have their own account. So it would kind of have to be something like we would set it up under their name and then transfer ownership to them so they could share their one space. But in terms of the actual design part, I mean, we do charge for, the Faro scan, and this would obviously be a cheaper thing, but we haven't really thought about how it would be, something that we would charge for. But I really see this more as something that would help us internally, rather so far more than charging someone for it at this point. We certainly hope to recover that cost, but we haven't gotten to that point yet.
I see. Excellent. We are an hour and a half. There's one question that was answered by Kellen and answered in text form, but I will just get it out there. Daniel, a participant, not a participant, someone in the audience has asked a question about which model camera has the best quality for 360 captures. Kellen answered that, is it the X or the Z? She answered, it is the Z one. It has the highest quality and can shoot in the raw format. I think part of the reason it has higher quality too is because it has a larger image sensor. that obviously contributes to better light quality in the imagery.
Yes, that's correct. Thanks, Anthony.
Yeah, just wanted to get that out there. So that was in the webinar itself.
Yeah,
I
it
don't
also
see-
said it was better in low light photography, which if you're in a construction site, you know, which before it's really well lit, that could be a critical factor.
Right, exactly. No, that's very true. And I kind of noticed that with some of your project, it was sort of on the darker side. And mine too, a little bit. So yeah, that's a great point. So that's the important aspect of the Z. It does have that higher image quality and low light levels. I think we want to wrap up now. We don't have any more questions from the audience out there. I want to ask Kellen or Dean if they have any final comments that they would like to add about the RICOH THETA X and RICOH's full lineup of tools.
I think you did a great job covering it, Anthony and team. So thank you so much for joining us. I did see that someone just asked for a THETA X giveaway. I can say that Ramon, if we can connect after the webinar, and I can at least get you a unit to test out if you're interested in trying it. So we can connect following. And yeah, if any other questions come through, you know, feel free to, I guess, direct to Anthony, who can then direct to me, and we can get you connected with the right answers, or you know, where to purchase and things like that.
Okay, excellent. Well, I want to thank RICOH and their entire THETA team for wanting to co-host this webinar on Architosh, and for all the participants who joined us today, and everyone who logged in to the webinar. Thank you very much, and have a nice rest of the evening.
Yeah, hopefully it was helpful to RICOH. This was a lot of fun.
Great. Thanks.
We appreciate everyone's.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you.
Thank you.